Students discuss the importance of keeping the planet clean, read and listen to a sample text, and write their own text and give and receive feedback. All this illustrates how all English language skills can be integrated in the same lesson, as you are going to see. After stating the learning objectives, you need to think of the key vocabulary and key language to use and practice all through for today's lesson. After that, you need to think of the materials, resources, or tools you are going to use to best teach your lesson. For today's lesson, you'll need to use the student's book, pages 66 and 67, the audio files. Now, let's talk about the learning activities. The learning activities are exercises that are carried out during a teaching process. The learning activities include the warm-up activities, the presentation stage, the guided practice, and closure. Let's talk about the opener or the warm-up techniques you use to engage your students at the beginning of the lesson. For today's lesson, welcome your students in a polite and friendly way. This will help them to feel confident. Explain that this lesson is about writing a tips text. Elicit some ideas from the class about what they think a tips text might be. Discuss the idea that a tips text gives ideas and how to improve a situation. After that, read through the lesson objectives in the box with the class so they know what to expect and learn by the end of the lesson. Now, let's move to the presentation stage. For exercise 1, students are to work in pairs to look at 2 pictures and try to guess what the young people want to change as a preparation for the coming exercise. Put the students into pairs. Ask them to talk about what they can see in the photo. Ask, what do the signs say? Do the young people look happy or unhappy? Elicit the idea that the young people are environmental campaigners and want more sustainable future. Put the students into pairs or groups to share their ideas and then hold a class feedback session. Now, let's move to the guided practice stage, where your students practice the new language with your guidance. For exercise 2, students are to read and listen to the tips text to make notes in their notebook. Read the instructions and then read the title of the tips text to the class. Explain to students that they are going to read some tips for reducing carbon emissions. Then elicit different ideas from the class for how to do this. Students do the task individually and then compare answers with a partner. If students have different answers, ask them to read the text again and try to work out the correct answer. Check answers around the class and ask students questions like, do you agree with the tips? Are there any other steps you could add? Now for exercise 3, students are to learn how to use pronouns to avoid repetition. With books closed, write the example sentence on the board, but write charging stations twice instead of writing the pronoun. For example, we need more charging stations in our town, so it's easier for people to use the charging stations. Read the second example of the charging stations and elicit from the class the correct pronoun to replace it, which is them. Read the writing tip box to the class and check understanding, and you can explain again that using pronouns to avoid repetition can help our writing sound more natural and more interesting. With the books open, read the instruction to the class and ask students to find the underlined pronoun in each sentence. To do the task, have students compare their answers with a partner before you check answers as a class. Now, for exercise 4, tell your students that they are going to write a tips text about how to make transportation cleaner in their city and that they need to start collecting ideas. Give your students 2 or 3 minutes to write their lists in the notebook. Tell your students to write notes, not full sentences. Ask Ask them to either compare the lists in pairs or tell their partner about what they are going to write about. Encourage your students to give each other feedback to help improve their plans. Monitor and provide any vocabulary students might need. Now, for exercise 5, students are to write their tips text about how to make transportation cleaner in their town or city using their notes from exercise 4 and the expressions in the useful language box. Read the instruction with the class and remind students of the importance of underlining the key words in the instructions to make sure that they complete the task correctly. Tell students to reread the writing tip box before and after writing their tips text. Remind them to use phrases from the useful language box and to follow the model in exercise 2. However, be clear that they should write their own tips and not copy the model. Students write their tips text in class or for homework. When they have finished writing, they should check it carefully against the above criteria in step 2. Students peer correct each other's work at the beginning of the next lesson if they did the writing task for homework. Now for exercise 6, students are to provide feedback to their own tips texts. Read the instruction to the class. Students read the 4 questions and check that they have answered yes to all of them. If they have answered no to any of them, they should change something or rewrite their work before giving back to you for grading. Ask a few students to read their corrected work to the class. Encourage the class to give feedback if all the questions have been answered correctly. Now, let's move to the self-assessment part. Remember, self-assessment is a proven way to encourage your students to take ownership of their learning and become more aware of what they have understood and what they feel they need more practice or support in. Remind your students of the meaning of the can-do statements and write this on the board. The statement means that students can do what it says in the lesson objectives. Put the students into familiar pairs or small groups with the students that they feel comfortable talking to. Read the first objective in the self-assessment with the class, then turn to the corresponding lesson. Lesson 1, Vocabulary for Clean Transportation, page 56. Ask pairs or groups to discuss how confident they feel about being able to use this vocabulary now. Do they remember all the vocabulary? Can they use them in sentences? Or are there some items they still aren't sure about? Repeat this step for all of the assessment objectives and ask a student to focus on one of the objectives with which they feel they need more support or practice. Now that you're done with the lessons exercises and are sure that your students have mastered the new language points, you need to assess your students' progress in achieving the learning outcomes. Let's move to the classroom performance activities. The classroom performance activities work as your tools to check your students' progress in achieving the target learning objectives.
تابعوا حلقات برنامج دليل المعلم على تطبيق مدرستنا بلس. مدرستنا، المستقبل يبدأ الآن.